I don't care where this day goes as long as you are there. Or we can chase the clouds away and laugh about the air. Or we could fly a kite. All we need is wind and time. I hope that you could be a friend of mine. I hope that you could be a friend of mine. That we can have a picnic if the ants cooperate. And we can learn to tell time so we'll know when we are late. If I don't pay attention, I'll let you pay the fine. Yeah, I hope that you could be a friend of mine. Oh, I hope that you could be a friend.
So many nightmares about IEPs, and me and my husband were really scared that we thought, all our services were going to just, everything was going to be taken away.
It does cause a lot of fear and apprehension in people because it seems to be an area where parents feel they have to defend themselves in order to get what they need for their child.
You walk in and you feel like you need to put your punching gloves on. I felt really bullied.
And I felt really insulted that they would try to tell me that I didn't know my son as a parent.
I think it can get pretty crazy. You get to the point where you feel so frustrated.
After every IEP, she would go in the bathroom and throw up.
It was terrifying.
It's so scary.
An individualized education program meeting is an opportunity for people who have a devotion to the educational success of a particular student. This opportunity allows the team to determine whether or not a student qualifies for services under special education and to identify what supports that student may need to benefit from their educational program. It is crucial that teams incorporate the expertise of families. It is family members who love the student, have a lifelong relationship with them, and who will know them in a wide variety of environments. Teams should always consider that families have the most invested in the student and have the most valid input on hopes and dreams for that person's future. If family members or parents are unable to attend an IEP meeting, schools can use other methods to ensure family participation, such as team meetings, telephone calls, home visits, and homeschool communication systems in writing.
I think of an IEP as the critical kind of document that contains all the information about a student's education. So it's kind of a summary of everything that we're doing for a student currently and everything that we want to be doing in the next year.
An IEP has to mean something different to a professional than it does to a parent. To me, it's like a promise that we make to a family that we know your child and we know what they need to learn, and we're going to provide it for them, and we're going to be accountable for our promise.
I just feel that the IEPs are a great time for the parents and the teachers to sit together and make sure that we're on the same wavelength. There's no surprises. And we both work together, parents and teachers.
An IEP is a legal document, and the composition of the team who develops it is mandated by federal law. Teams can be large or small depending on the needs of the student. The cornerstone of any IEP team is the student's family. All complete IEP teams include an administrator who represents the school and the school district to ensure that plans are carried out. General and special education teachers come together to bring expertise on standards-based curriculum, as well as adaptations and instructional strategies that meet the needs of the student. In addition, designated or related service providers who bring expertise related to that student's specific needs. For students who are impacted by medical issues, a nurse's presence is required. It is most beneficial for the student themselves to attend all or part of the IEP meeting as deemed appropriate by their family. As professionals in the service of students, school representatives must develop an understanding that families may have a variety of responsibilities and that more than one meeting date or time may need to be offered.
I want to welcome you here today to develop an individualized education plan for Alejandro, who everyone at this table knows. To start off with, I would like to offer Alejandro's family a copy of your rights.
Prior to the beginning of any IEP meeting, parents' rights are given and explained so that families understand their rights and protections regarding dispute resolution. Schools are required to do their best to ensure family participation through early notification. School teams must ensure that if an interpreter is needed, that one is provided to ensure that families can contribute. Ideally, teams have participated in some kind of person-centered planning process prior to the IEP meeting itself that involves a discussion with the family regarding present levels of performance and the previous year's goal achievement.
All right, we'll start. I just want to share with the team that Alejandro has had a person-centered planning process that was done last year, and that is his MAPS process, making action plans. I just want to share a couple of items from it to keep us focused and child-centered in this process. Alejandro's birthday is the day after Thanksgiving. He lives with his family and his sister and a new foster brother, I understand. Yes. And one of the neat things about the person-centered planning process is a couple of questions that are really key are what are the dreams for Alejandro, and also what are the nightmares. So I'm going to share with you just a couple of dreams, and Alejandro's family and friends and professionals want him to share and lead a fulfilling and happy life. We want him as independent as possible in every aspect of his life, particularly with his ability to communicate. And I think it's important to acknowledge what we're most afraid of when we're planning for a person. And Ali's family has shared that above all, we do not want Alejandro to experience feeling left out. Another nightmare is not being able to express himself in an effective manner. So hearing communication is really, really important to this team, and that's one of the things that's going to stay on the forefront of our minds as we talk. I'll ask Ms. Henry to ask for a review of last year's goals based on collected data.
In terms of how we collect data and information about Alejandro, we perform observation where we watch him closely looking for certain things, so looking for how he's achieving his goals specifically. We also do data collection at our school where we look at each goal over time. So we write down specific anecdotal information about his goals every day and then can look back over time and see how he's doing related to specific goals.
If the IEP meeting is not an initial meeting, the previous year's goals will always be reviewed. In the process of sharing goal achievement, team members will define the means by which goal progress is measured. As goals are designed to be observable and measurable, team members can share data collection systems and artifacts which provide evidence of the student's mastery of a skill. In the event that an IEP goal has not been met, the team will discuss and document the reasons why.
The IEP process is designed for development of consensus and the hearing of everyone's concerns.
Present levels of performance are a description of student functioning, including areas of strength and need across subject areas, which can include reading, written language, mathematics, and social or emotional needs. These descriptions are developed from teacher observations and assessment. Present levels of performance are also developed by any related service providers who support the student. It is important that the student's family understand the role of each person prior to the IEP meeting and has an opportunity to review written reports before sitting down with the team. This courtesy allows parents maximum access to the information being shared from a variety of team members. During the meeting, each team member also has the opportunity to hear all reports and develop their perspective of the student as a whole person.
My name is Ronen. I'm the ATE teacher. My job is to help the teacher to adapt the PE lessons to the special needs of the students and to help the students to participate better in the PE lessons.
Hi, I'm Cindy Petrak. I'm a registered nurse, and my job here is to address health and medical issues or concerns which might impact Alejandro here at school.
I mean, there are certain things that are medically necessary for all members of the IEP to know about, and I was in one where the PT came in and then left, and then the OT came in and then left. Everyone needs to know what's going on. Everyone needs to understand when she's not sitting up straight and someone is trying to feed her, she can aspirate and get pneumonia. The PT needs to know that, the speech therapist, the teacher, everybody.
We had an IEP for a student that I had who had special medical needs, and it was really nice to be able to have that meeting before school started so that I was aware of what those needs were, and I felt very comfortable after I was educated to help that student and to make sure that others that were working with that student knew what to do. And that was a really nice feeling to know that I could help that child.
Okay, I think we'll go ahead and start with occupational therapy and then physical therapy.
Okay. My name is Marcy Kirsch. I'm the occupational therapist, and my job is to look at how Alejandro is functioning in the classroom.
The school physical and occupational therapists address students' fine and gross motor skills throughout all school environments, as well as access through adapted equipment in collaboration with teachers. The physical therapist and occupational therapist share in planning and implementing activities connected to the curriculum that support achievement towards therapy goals.
Essentially, with a collaborative model, what we're doing is we're designing goals and then interventions to reach those goals that are woven into the fabric of Allie's daily classroom activities. Allie uses a variety of ways of communicating, including his voice, his facial expression, body movements or gestures, such as clapping his hands to show he's excited, American Sign Language or sign approximations, switches, written language, including labels and a name stamp. He often uses pictures to make choices during academic activities.
New annual goals are developed through the IEP team meeting in collaboration with all team members. Of course, based on prior conversations with families and information gained from the present level of performance, teachers and related service providers come prepared with ideas for new goals to be discussed and refined in the meeting itself. Meaningful IEP goals lend themselves to a variety of contexts and situations to ensure thorough practice across environments. All goals are written to be measurable. The IEP team determines supports needed for goal achievement, as well as criteria to determine mastery.
Just to kind of look a little bit more in the direction of his needs and goals. One, it would be, and this is something that I think we've all talked about, for Allie to use a voice output communication aid to communicate to peers and adults about events and activities which occurred in the past, at least once a day for 3 out of 5 consecutive days. And the idea here is that with a simple switch device, very easy to program and change, it's possible for Allie to come to school and tell anyone who's interested what he did this weekend. And so this allows him to expand his communication opportunities within the school setting and at home, while at the same time introducing his ability to talk about things in the past.
Okay, I'd like to go ahead and hear from the teachers right now. If nobody has any more questions about speech and language, I know that you guys are the biggest experts on Ollie's communication systems. So I think if you don't have any questions, we're safe to go ahead and go.
Yes.
All right, and I know that everybody has the report in front of them and has read it. So I'll ask you to summarize.
Katie's the general ed teacher, I'm the special ed teacher. We teach together. Katie's in there all day, and I'm there for a third of the day every day. So I want to point that out, that we write things about Alejandro together, we talk about it, and we both have a lot of information.
During the IEP, we really see ourselves as one teacher almost. It's not her separate from me.
As a co-teacher with a general ed teacher, it's absolutely about both of us as his teachers. So when we're planning for an IEP, nothing's done in isolation. I don't sit in my office and write about Alejandro, and she doesn't sit in her classroom and write about him separately. It's all about doing it together.
I've realized that it's so beneficial, no matter if I'm working with one student or the whole class, you always have another perspective, and she thinks of things that I never thought of, or she, can bring an insight into Ollie that I didn't see before.
When we're sitting down and talking about his goals, we're talking about things that she might have noticed as a general ed teacher that I might have bypassed as a special ed teacher. For example, I was so focused on him doing functional math activities as a person with a severe disability that I forgot to think about subtraction. So when we sit down together, we kind of both add some of our input, and I think it becomes a much more cohesive plan.
It's nice, like you said, when somebody says to you, what do you think? What are
right.
Sophia's needs? And you're the expert, so you tell us what you think, and then we'll give you our suggestions.
You're working as a team, and you're building this future for your child.
It was so clear in that meeting how those parents knew him so well, and they had so much information about him. And I think that one thing that went very well is that I felt like even though they had all these professionals surrounding them, that they still felt comfortable sharing and being active participants in that meeting. I think that part of that is because we've all developed a relationship with them.
He does reading within regular reading group. He also, when we're doing writing activities, he has to choose different words to complete his writing, which is part of reading. And we talked about he reads at home, he will listen to stories read at home, but he has trouble staying and listening, right, for the whole thing. So that's
he
an
wants
area
to
of
move
concern.
on quick.
Right.
So he'll use a voice output to participate in reading group. He'll also like to answer comprehension questions about a story. This is a story map that he did. He would get, like, for the main character, we would choose pictures from the story, and he would choose who the main character was between two pictures and glue it on, and then choose, he puts on labels as well to finish the sentence. So that's his main way of participating and showing comprehension of what he's heard from the story, and he's very, very consistent with this. He really understands what he reads, and we're able to see that based on him choosing pictures, usually two choices.
What we'd like to do is work more towards having him have a picture that he then has to choose the correct word to go with it. I think that using pictures, even if he's reading the words without a picture, it still helps him a lot to really understand what he's writing about. We don't want him to just choose words out of context and put them on a paper and have it not be meaningful to him. So even if he is looking at those two separate words without a picture next to them, I want him to be making that connection and putting that word next to a picture so that he still knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, for instance, he wrote about important people in his life, and he was able to choose between pictures who he wanted to talk about.
I think that I would like to point out that aura of respect for a parent. I think that one thing that professionals at that meeting did was consistently check back with the parent and make sure that they felt comfortable with the information they were receiving, that they understood all the information, and that we solicit feedback from the parents also. I think that that's something that doesn't always happen in meetings, and that's something that I would like professionals to know should happen in every meeting, that should be an expected outcome.
Because this is a 3-year review and you have opted for some assessment from a school psychologist, we'll hear Deanne's report now.
Okay, and my job is to assess students' cognitive development, their social emotional development, look at their self-help skills, kind of pull from a lot of different areas. And I did that by doing authentic and informal assessment with Alejandro. I don't feel that formal assessment, standardized tests would adequately tap into his skills and abilities. And so we had a conversation on the phone, and I've talked with all of the people who work with him. I also have been in the classroom several times to observe him.
Maybe someone comes in and they're an expertise in their field, but they don't know your child.
Right.
Yeah. It makes me so angry when someone comes in, well, this is why this happens and this is what happens. And it's like, but have you met my child? Have you sat down and worked with my child?
Usually when they do assessments, they meet your child for 30 minutes, or they come and they meet them, when they're sleepy or right after a nap, or all these unusual times, and it's really hard to get an understanding of anybody in that short amount of time.
School psychologists provide important information regarding cognitive functioning and profiles of processing strengths and areas of need that contribute to the overall understanding of the ways that an individual student learns. A school psychologist is a required team member for initial IEPs when eligibility is determined, or in meetings when eligibility may be changed. A school psychologist's input may also be requested at a triennial evaluation. Prior to that meeting, the IEP team will determine what types of assessment will be most useful in the understanding of student learning needs. These assessments can range from standardized and formal to observation-based and authentic. Often teams find that a numbered score from a standardized test provides little information on who a student is and on what they can accomplish. More and more often, teams are finding authentic assessments to be more informative and valid. Decisions regarding psychological evaluation and reevaluations are based on what the team determines will be most meaningful to the student and provide the most useful information in developing an instructional program.
We talked about it at home, some of the things that he likes to do. He really enjoys books, and you said he likes to watch other people do things, and I've seen that in the classroom too. He really is interested in what others are doing and will watch for long periods of time. In fact, you said he gets upset with his sister sometimes when she stops doing something that he's enjoying watching. And he's also very mindful of what's going on around the house, and when you give directions to someone else, if they don't follow them, he comes and lets you know that they haven't done what they're supposed to do. Like when you've told brother to get up and brother doesn't get up, he'll go and point to the bedroom like, why isn't he up yet? And that he's very good at communicating his needs and his interest and his wants through a variety of different ways. We've talked about a lot of different things that he does now.
During this portion of the IEP meeting, the team will discuss the level of additional adult support Alejandro requires to access and benefit from his educational program. The topic of paraprofessional or assistant support will be well defined according to Alejandro's needs. The team determines what help Ali requires with regard to personal needs, transitioning, curricular access, and facilitation of social supports. With this description in place, Alejandro will have the help that he needs specifically documented into his IEP. In defining additional adult support, the team continually looks at fading plans to promote independence, bypass social stigma associated with too much adult proximity, and an instructional plan for Ali to learn to rely on natural supports such as peer help and modeling, attending to teacher directions, and the use of natural cues in the school and classroom environment. It is always important for teams to remember that while a label or eligibility is needed in order to provide services, it does not determine who the student is as an individual, nor does it determine program placement. There are certain things in every IEP that we need to cover. The next one is, in order to qualify for special education services, a student needs to have an eligibility. And there are the eligibilities recognized by IDEA. Ali currently has 3 eligibilities, and they are in descending order of the way that they impact him. I mean, these eligibilities serve a purpose, and they are absolutely necessary for him to receive services. They don't describe who Ali is, and that's always the problem with families and discussing eligibilities. Some of these it feels like if you're going to say my child has mental retardation, there's so many other things I want you to know about him first, other than that. And so I struggle with eligibility, but I also know that it's something we need to have real discussions about. So I don't know, how does everybody feel about that? And that's something we really all need to agree on, led by you.
God forbid him something happens, he goes someplace else or the school, and then
Sure,
because of that label, it will limit his access to, health, that will be good, but
yeah, a label's just a label, and programs, his services should always be determined by his needs, not by what the label on the program is, and you have a right as parents to demand those services to meet his needs, regardless of what the name of the program is.
And if you move to another state tomorrow, you might need to do that. You might need to say, this is my child's eligibility, but his eligibility is not going to drive his program, and because he has an eligibility of mental retardation, I'm not going to allow you to put him into a classroom that's populated by a lot of kids with that same label, that you're not comfortable with that as a family. You always need to keep that at the forefront of your minds, regardless of any label that he has, that you need to be the advocates for him and help a team interpret his paperwork. So I think that these labels that we get involved in, and sometimes test scores and things like that, are not as valuable and end up being hurtful. And I would love for teams to understand that we all know that labels are necessary and that they're part of federal requirements. But I think that before we discuss any kind of label, we need to be honorable professionals and have the foresight to have a phone conversation with a family and prepare them for what they're walking into, so that it doesn't feel like a language or a label ambush. And we can be gentle with people and also have professional integrity and do the documentation that we need to do. Alejandro's team determined that his needs would best be met in a general education classroom, with all services provided in this setting. Related service providers in the areas of occupational therapy, language and speech, adapted physical education, and physical therapy will share their expertise in the classroom in the form of collaboration, consultation, and instruction. Special and general education teachers will provide service to Alejandro through co-teaching. The special education teacher will be an active partner in Alejandro's classroom for a portion of every day. She will modify curriculum as well as jointly planning, teaching, and assessing students in partnership with her general education colleague. This IEP indicates that he receives his services pushed into the classroom rather than him being pulled out. All IEP teams carefully consider placement in the least restrictive environment. Instructional programs should be as close to typically developing peers with access to standards-based curriculum as possible. All supports and services are to be made available in all instructional programs, with consideration of how services will be delivered and coordinated. Placement is not driven by eligibility, nature or severity of a student's disability, or by existing systems or structures within a school district. All placement options and supports need to be reevaluated for success and least restrictive environment every year. So, having discussed eligibility, we come to this discussion about placement. And I think you guys have experienced a variety of placement options. As you know, we are obligated by federal law to provide Alejandro with what's called least restrictive environment. And that law indicates that we need to bring his educational experience as close to that of his non-disabled peers as possible. So that also indicates that he has access to core curriculum and standards. He has access to typically developing children and those social interactions that go on with it. He has access to the ancillary activities and arts that go on in the general education curriculum. I'm going to just go ahead and name the least restrictive environment options for you so that you're familiar with them. I think you are, but I think in every single IEP this needs to be thoroughly discussed. The IEP team will determine whether or not a student will be held accountable to grade level standards. This is an important discussion in determining the level of curricular adaptations based on student needs. Teams need to make specific plans for holding to or waiving accountability to grade level standards, or students can get caught in a cycle of continually losing access to same-age peers. And then the next portion of the IEP that needs to be discussed is whether or not Alejandro will be held accountable to grade level standards. And I will just read for you what we came up, the statement we came up with last time, and that is grade level standards are not an accurate measure of Alejandro's skills and abilities. He experiences visual, sensory, and auditory processing issues related to his disability, which impact his access to grade level curriculum. And I'm still thinking that is meaningful. We would never want him to be a kid that we held back and waited for him to meet first grade standards, because all those kids that he enjoys so much and he's so close to and support his learning would pass him by. And we want him to enter the community as an adult with a core cadre of people that he's known all his life. Curricular adaptations that provide access to standards-based curriculum are discussed in every IEP. These decisions are thoroughly documented so that anyone teaching the student knows what that individual needs in order to learn. Adaptations are defined as either accommodations, which provide access without changing the learning standard, or as modifications, which do change the learning standard for a student based on their individual needs. The next part of the IEP is instructional accommodations and modifications, and as I said previously, I believe that this is the heart of the IEP, what a child needs to learn. As far as accommodations go, increased wait time for all responses, cue directions and questions presented either verbally or with sign or gestures. Do not use both at the same time, and that's something you really had to teach us about him. Right. Without too many repetitions of directions, which affects his processing. And this is in big letters. Use a slant board. Provide sensory input and strategies. use adapted writing implements and scissors. And then under modifications, we have use of labels and stamps for identifying choices to respond to the curriculum. Use of picture and alternative methods for documenting thoughts and ideas. Reduced number of items for mastery. And I'm going to ask the team anything else that we're missing. What about communication system or picture schedules? I think his social prop needs to be in.
Okay. Name stamp.
Name stamp needs to be there.
Can we say just voice output communication aids?
Yeah.
And we can use
So we have a
of
variety.
different voice output communication aids for him to use.
Now we need to talk about the standardized testing for the state. I know that last year Alejandro participated in an alternate, the California Alternate Performance Assessment. All IEP teams are required to discuss a student's participation in any group or state assessments that hold school districts accountable for student achievement. For a small percentage of students, standardized testing is not meaningful, and IEP teams must consider alternative assessments and document those decisions in the IEP. It is very important that teams also consider accommodations and modifications that provide access for valid assessment experiences and results. What was his experience like with the California Alternate Performance Assessment?
I think it's definitely much more meaningful than the regular state testing is, because the California Alternate Performance Assessment asks them to do things like find a correct day of the week. So it's asking him, find Wednesday on this list of words, and it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So I think that's much more meaningful to him, and there's a lot of functional skills addressed in there that are skills that we are working on within his daily routine anyway. And so I do feel like it's more meaningful to him than the statewide test.
Extended school year is offered to those children who experience regression resulting in an interruption of their learning. So if Alejandro went the entire 3 months without school, we think he would probably lose some of the skills he's gained. So he is eligible for extended school year in the summertime. Also, assistive technology devices, we want to note that he requires some assistive technology to support his learning needs, and that is a slant board and access to an adapted keyboard and software. Once you take the IEP home and read it, we will ask that you either agree or disagree with the free and appropriate public education that we've offered here today for Alejandro. You'll see there's very specific place. If you just disagree with a portion of that IEP, you can note it here and describe the portion that you don't agree with. If you agree with the entire thing, there's a place here to mark that. And if you are requesting informal conference or some other kind of due process, you'll note that and sign, and it will be the school's responsibility to file that paperwork for you. Any questions at all? I think you guys have experienced that, all of the options that are available to you with either agreeing or disagreeing. Is that true?
Correct.
All right, good. The IEP cannot be implemented without your consent. So we'll be waiting for that, but we also want to be people who know you need time to process this. And we've done a lot of writing today, and we want you to see what we've written. All right, thank you very much, everyone. The most important thing any IEP team can do is to value the student and their family. It is our job to take the preparation for and the participation in each IEP meeting seriously and professionally. We need to create atmospheres where families feel comfortable and sure of their participation. We need to make decisions based on student need and not on any other agenda. As professionals, we need to remember that these are people's children. IEP meetings require a thorough planning and preparation and a devotion to student success and family participation. We need to work to create atmospheres where families feel comfortable as contributors and leaders in student success. The more connected teachers and school staff are to a family prior to an IEP meeting and throughout the school year, the more productive and friendly the meeting itself will be.
I don't care where this day goes as long as you are there. Or we can chase the clouds away and laugh about the air. Or we could fly a kite, all we need is wind and time. I hope that you could be a friend of mine. I hope that you could be a friend of mine.